Welcome to On Texas Football. It's time for Second Watch with Rod Babers. Rod has broken down the film today and gone back and looked at every single play. He has a few things that he wants to talk about and go over from the game that he's learned after that second watch. We'll do that right now. But first, we want to say thank you to our sponsor. That is Brett Robin, Dr. Brett Robin, your Austin orthopedic specialist, 512-856-1000. Special thanks to Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000. And get back to your active lifestyle and what you love doing. Rod B., you've given me a list of things to talk about today. Let's start with one that I think everybody would agree with you on, but tell us a little bit of how. Your number one topic for me was Texas run game is maturing at the right time. I think we all look at Tre Wisner, 186 yards on the ground, total team effort, 240 yards on the ground against A&M. Your thoughts on that, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, actually. I did not expect to be here at early on in the season making predictions about the identity of the offense and how it would materialize with all the weapons they have. I did not think we'd be talking about Tre Wisner as a bell cow running back, but that's the reality. And that's a beautiful reality for Texas. And it has been for the last couple of games versus Kentucky and now versus, A&M. It's like about 340 something yards rushing in the last two games. And Texas has found its groove with one of its main it's kind of its main course concepts in the running game, which is the wide zone. The split wide zone is a version of it as well. In that game versus A&M, the Texas had 4 explosive runs off of the split wide zone. I mean, that's the run they kept popping versus Oklahoma with Tre Wisner, and it seems to be Tre Wisner's specialty. It's perfect for his patience, for his vision. He's great. He's got great burst when he does see the hole and he does see that little sliver of daylight. So really take advantage of it. And so of the running back runs, because Quinn and Arch have got a couple of explosive runs in the last couple of weeks too. But of the running back runs, the explosive running back runs in the last 2 weeks, I counted 13 of them combined versus Kentucky and A&M, and 69% of them have come off some version of the wide zone or the split wide zone. So they're finding their groove with that concept lately. No question about it.
So what is the blocking scheme there? Is it basically you double team the nose or the play side tackle and then try to push out to that side? Or what is the thought process behind that? And what gives it? Because I see it too, by the way. Yeah. I see Wisner, and I know fans do as well, that he cuts through the hole and it's like slicing through butter almost. I mean, he goes, right? But you got to have that patience and vision. But he's also sometimes able to cut it back off of it.
Cut it back.
Because there's been so much movement down the line. Is that the whole idea? And what's the blocking scheme, et cetera, that they're doing?
That's why it works so well, right? It gives you so many different options for a running back. I mean, it could materialize whether if they over pursue that the backside, the cutback ends up opening up for Tre, or if they try to play it obviously a little bit more aggressive and try to penetrate, and then you can see oftentimes guys will penetrate, and yet you'll see the offensive lineman just kind of wall them off. And then allow Tre Wisner to get right around to the corner and to the outside. So the blocking concept is really you kind of blocking an area. I mean, it's a zone blocking scheme. So you're not necessarily blocking a man. A lot of times you're trying to shield off a man and then get to the second level. Almost, just shield them at initially and then get to the second level. And that's where it's really dangerous for a guy like Tre Wisner because he's got that burst and that one cut ability. So this has been their bread and butter concept. Going back to Bijan and Rojo, going back to Jay Brooks, I mean, it's their most utilized and kind of deployed run concept, the one they favor. And if you're a running back at Texas, you got to find a way to be able to thrive in that system. And he's better at it, even though a guy like, Jaden Blue obviously has some advantages with his speed. The patience actually is more of an advantage and more of a trait that is more successful, or at least lends itself to success with that zone blocking scheme.
That's amazing. What about, how does it peak at the right time? Is it that they finally found the right running back? Is they finally started working together better, or that Sark just started running it more so they got more reps? How is it peaking at the right time? Or is that just, that's football sometimes, luck of the draw?
No, I do see Sark running more heavier sets. And last week versus Kentucky, I was excited about the pony package. Most pony package I had seen all season long, or actually since Sark has been here at Texas in one game. And then this season, this game, it was the 12 personnel. I mean, they were heavy. I mean, you're talking about nearly 50% of your total plays. You were in 12 personnel versus A&M because you want to pound the rock. So I think that's a little bit a part of it. They're just going with heavier sets. There's no doubt the offensive line is playing their best football. There's no doubt. I mean, you just go back and watch them. I mean, they're pushing guys off the ball. They are resetting the line of scrimmage. There is now a push in the running game. I don't know if we had that consistently, earlier this season. I don't know if you had a consistent push in the running game. So I think they're playing their best football. And let's give some props to Tre Wisner. I mean, he has now established himself as he's your number one running back. He is the marquee guy, and he's proven that if you need him to, he can be a workhorse running back for you, and that means you got to be trustworthy and dependable with ball security, which has been a problem for Texas, but also someone who can be diverse enough when Texas wants to have variety in the running game as a running back to be able to run. They love the running counters. Counters is something they run really well too. I would say that's probably their second best or favorite run concept. They want to run counters, and you see all the time them pulling that backside guard, or them pulling the guard, and then obviously the Y, or gunner helm as well coming through. They love that concept. I would say that's probably been the second most explosive run concept for them in the last 2 weeks is the counter. So you got to be really good in that run concept scheme. And I think they're actually I saw them come back to some duo actually versus A&M, where they just double team at the point. Just run downhill. And Tre Wisner's proven he can be a downhill runner. I mean, he kind of it's strange how it works out. He doesn't seem to have the frame, but they can run downhill with him if they need to. Out of the pistol, sometimes they like to run it. So they do a really good job of it right now. I think they're just right now all of the different elements of the running game seem to be playing or peaking at the right time.
It's interesting you mentioned 12 personnel for people unfamiliar, and a lot of really avid football fans watch our podcast, Rod. Some not so avid that are still learning football. 12 personnel, that reflects on the amount of running backs and tight ends you have in formation. Yep. The first number stands for the number of running backs, and the second represents the number of tight ends. So 12 personnel means Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis typically are on the field at the same time in blocking roles in that situation. A lot of the times, Juan Davis had another really good game in that regard. Didn't show up in the stats sheet, but all he did was contribute to winning as well. All right, number 2, Rod, the second thing you wanted to talk about, and this was a couple things on both sides of the ball. To win big games, you have to break tendency. That's what you wrote. To win big games, you have to break tendency. On offense, what was that for the Longhorns, in your opinion?
Well, they obviously the arch package for Longhorns. I didn't expect to see it. I'll admit that. It is a surprise to me in terms of breaking tendency. And I think, I know this Texas offense is starting pretty well. So that was to me, and it got you a touchdown, by the way. I thought that was a great change of pace for Sark and the offense, and it even worked on the Aggies. So that's number one. I mean, you broke tendency there. And even that play we talked about, and you brought it up, it was a tackle over unbalanced formation, which I cannot recall seeing much tackle over in the last couple of years. Maybe in 2021 you saw some of it. He runs unbalanced formations, but I can't recall seeing a tackle over very often. And that's when you bring one of the offensive tackles over to the other side of the formation, hence having 2 tackles on one side of the formation, and they call it tackle over. And so they had it on the right side of the formation. They actually had the left tackle Gooseby end up having him on. I believe Kevin Banks had already gone out by then.
Yep, it's right.
So they had him on the right side, and they had on the left side just Gunnar Helm right next to the left guard.
Yes.
And even more unbalanced, they had twins to the tackle over side.
Yes,
twins to that side, and then they had the 2, essentially what looked like a 2-back set. It was one Davis in the backfield, but then they also had a running back in the backfield with them. So it was a funky formation that I don't think we've seen from start period at all. So he was in his bag on that one. Great tendency breaker, ended up getting you a touchdown. That's why it's important, because all the prep that's done for these big games, tons of it, they're just looking for trends, they're looking for patterns, they're looking for tendencies in situations, especially red zone, things like that. I mean, that's talking about one of your top situations, 3rd down, red zone. And so they know you pretty well, especially at the end of the season. I mean, you're established.
A lot of film by that time on tape.
A lot of film to study at this point. Huge support staff with algorithms and data points and guys like me, dime a dozen, just sitting down looking for patterns and trends. And it's important for you to be able to flip that and make that information work against them, to make all that data and make those trends work against them. And that was a beautiful way for Sark. There's not, like I said, I didn't expect it. I know there were some on the On Texas Football channel, some of our coaches who suggested and said, hey, you should do it. And that's why they're coaches, right? That's why they get paid that kind of money. And they're like, you should do this, because those guys are smart and they understand you got to break tendency, especially this late in the season. So that was important. And I think the playing more power sets and 12 personnel and the early game pass rate. I mean, it was close. I mean, it was under 60%. There's no doubt on the early down pass rate, because they were running the rock. And there hadn't been many games where that has been the case. I mean, I want to say Arch's first start, that was the case. Oklahoma, that might have been the case early on, because they were running the rock because Quinn was a little shaky early on. You know, there are some games where Sark will have more balance early down pass rate. That's like the first half, first and second down. But this game was a little different. I think he did it because he knew that running game could travel. He knew he could run against the A&M front. And that's one of the better fronts in the SEC. And he knew he could run against them on the road at their place. That to me shows that, you know, he had been. I think he's not as surprised as we are about the maturity of that run game. I'll say that. I think he knew it was gonna hit at one time. He just didn't know when.
What was the tendency breaker on defense that you noticed?
I thought, first of all, the blitz rates, according to Pro Football Focus, according to their numbers, they have it as the second lowest blitz rate of the season, behind the Mississippi State game, I believe. And from what I remember, there were a lot of blitzes on run blitzes on early downs, them trying to force negative plays and disrupt, and it ended up catching actually A&M throwing the football on some of those downs. I remember seeing Benda and Anthony Hill help Michael Taft as well, coming down there, blitzing on some early downs. So it was interesting that usually when there's a younger quarterback, a freshman quarterback especially, I think Texas' 2 highest blitz rates of this season, according to Pro Football Focus, were Michael Hawkins and actually last week versus Kentucky's Boley, the young quarterback.
In the second half. Yeah.
When he came in. Yeah. Why not go after him when those quarterbacks are young, speed up their process, give them a lot to have to digest. They didn't do that with Morrisell Reed as much. And I think after they got a lot of organic pass rushers, guys like Vernon Broughton were just blowing up plays and proving themselves to be, an unstoppable kind of war daddy in that situation. So that was a little surprising. I think that was a tendency, right? Even though Texas has low blitz rates, I mean, to be that low in a game against a young quarterback, I think that's unexpected, just based on some of the things we've talked about. I saw probably a lot more NASCAR nickel, which is essentially the 3 defensive end package with Colin Simmons on the field. Instead of the dime, it's in the nickel package. I think that was intentional. Try to make sure they had some more linebackers on the field against the run, and it's a spy, Morrisell Reed and Colin Simmons, more speed on the field, and that NASCAR package brings you more speed on the field. But if you don't want to be vulnerable to the run game are vulnerable to Marcel Reed being a problem in the open field trying to tackle that guy. Keep your linebackers on the field so you can have legitimate spies. And I think that was intentional, something I haven't seen a lot of.
And you wouldn't know where the spy was coming from.
Yeah, because
Texas has multiple guys that can be spies now, Rod. It's not only Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill. It could be Trey Moore.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Ethan Burke has even played that role. And
I agree.
They have a bunch of different pieces to that puzzle. Anything else you wanted to add on what they did differently there? Or do you want to go on to your last point before we let people go?
We can go on to the last point. I mean, I think defensively, though, Texas, I would say that there are a lot of miraculous plays, but we didn't talk enough about how good A&M was in the red zone prior to this game because nobody really expected them to be able to drive the length of the field on Texas. Yeah. They got in the red zone twice, once because they did drive the length of the field that first drive. And for Texas to have 2 goal line stands in that game on the road, I don't know the last time I've seen it. I don't know. That was pretty remarkable because we didn't talk about it. That red zone offense for the Aggies, you're talking about that was a top 10, top 20 red zone offense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a really good red zone offense. I think now they've dropped out of it. Maybe they're like top 30 now because of Texas. Yeah. But that was a really good red zone offense going into that game.
Yeah. Well, they neutralized Marcel Reed's legs, in my opinion, effectively. No doubt about it. All right, your last one that you wanted to talk about was Taft's interception. And not so much about the great play that it was from a physical effort standpoint, right? We're going up and contorting your body, making the catch, and still having a foot in bounds. But something you noticed schematically and how you think this Texas team is still getting a little bit better as well with it. What is it exactly you want to give people a little insight into?
Okay, so one of the things that we've talked about is how tough it is to get big plays on this Texas defense. They're the best defense in the country for a lot of reasons, but they also allow the fewest explosive plays of 20 yards and more down the field. And they allowed, I believe, their second 20-plus yard run in that A&M game. Marcel Reed, that 24-yard scamper he had, that was the second 20-plus yard run they've allowed all season long. Like, that's how good they are. So it's hard to get explosive plays. And, one of the things that we talked about that has been working to get some explosive plays for Texas are some of these deep crossers. And oftentimes when you can move the pocket or the quarterback is scrambling and extending the play away from the Texas rush, we've seen quarterbacks be able to complete some of these deep crossers. I talked about it early in the show, but I documented Florida completed a 39-yard deep crosser. The quarterback didn't necessarily scramble or extend the play, but it was against Texas. I believe they were in cover 3. Arkansas, it was a 25-yarder. Quarterback did roll out and extend the play, and it was a deep crosser that they ended up completing a 25-yarder on. They were in cover 3, and Kentucky did it too. And he was scrambling, extending the play. We all remember the 42-yarder, I believe it was, bomb that they completed where he's rolling out, extending the play to his right. And they were in cover 3 in that one. And it was to a deep crosser who basically ends up getting almost lost in coverage because he violates their rules of coverage because nobody matches up with him. Like, nobody ends up matching him as their man. So he crosses into different dimensions of the coverage itself and ends up roaming free, or at least having, enough space for the quarterback to find him. And so and that was another one too in the Kentucky game, I believe, because there were a couple of big explosive plays. So in this game versus the Aggies, it was the Taft interception. So the second drive of the game, which means it was in the script.
Yep.
And they had been watching this play. You can go back and watch it. It was a 2x2 and 2 in the boundary. They end up motioning to 3x1, 3 to the field, only 1 receiver in the boundary. There ends up being a bunch look, a tight twins that the guy motions to, and they both run off. All right, Janae Barron, and they essentially run off the nickel. The number 3 receiver runs a kind of a wheel route. So he takes, essentially, that is going to occupy the curl basically that curl to flat defender. Sorry, they hook to curl defender because that nickel is the curl to flat defender there. They're playing cover 3. And that hook to curl defender, so he's gone. He's got to occupy. He's out. And the number 2 the number 2 receiver that was there, he clears out, but he starts to run a deep drag route. So essentially the nickel lets him go. He lets him go. And Makuba on the other side of the formation, on the boundary side, he's got no work because there's only one receiver over there. The corner takes him because it's match. Is it no receiver, no work? I'll take him, and then we'll let the rest of the zone take care of the coverage because he's the only receiver to this side. Makuba's looking for work now. He's got no responsibilities. He's the curl to flat defender on that side. So he looks to the other side of the field. He's like, there's 3 receivers over there. Somebody's coming back my way. And he ends up finding that number 2 receiver that runs that deep drag route. Remember, he's underneath actually the throw.
Yeah.
All right, maybe he's over the top of the throw. He's right there, right? No, he's underneath it. He's right underneath it because Taft is on the top, and then Taft undercuts and he gets the pick. He's right underneath, so he finds him. He actually finds him and identifies that this guy is going to be running free. That was an issue in their earlier cover 3s in the last 3 weeks because they weren't identifying that deep crosser from the backside. There was nobody.
What you're saying is Makuba was in the front so that Marcel Reed couldn't have thrown a flatter ball, perhaps that Taft wouldn't have been able to come over the top and intercept.
Yeah,
right?
We wanted to force it because once he rolls out, Taft is the deep single free safety, and he rolls with him. He's right over the top. Essentially, you ain't supposed to throw that football. You throw that football away, or you find somebody else. That he was covered underneath and covered on the top. So it was a bad decision by him, but a beautiful play by Taft. The adjustment is the point that they had gotten exploited on that concept, a similar concept for the last 3 weeks, last 3 games. And they were ready for it in this game. They knew self-scouting, they're going to attack us with this. They knew they were going to attack us with it. They knew. And they were right. The second drive of the game, it was a money concept for him. I believe it was on first down too.
Yep.
In the script, they were ready to go with it. And you know what? It was a great cover 3 beater, in my opinion. If not for the football intelligence of Andrew Makuba, I think it works. Most DBs don't end up making that play. They don't see that. They don't process that many steps ahead. That on that trip side, that number 2 receiver, who you think that's why he runs initially. He looks like he's clear. It looks like he's just going to run vertical. It's like going to be a vertical, and then he immediately goes back to the other side, and he starts running a deep crosser. And he looks like he's going to be open, but Makuba picks him up. By the time he hits that other hash, he picks him up.
I got to ask you this. You're a longtime DB watcher and played DB at Texas. I think, my personal opinion, I think there have been more talented defensive backfields at the University of Texas. There's no doubt in my mind. There's been more talented because there's been multiple first-round picks in secondaries. I'm not sure there's multiple first-round picks in this Texas secondary right now. And my question for you, has there been a smarter secondary than the one that they're putting on the field right now? Because you're talking about Barron having that kind of natural film study. You're talking about Makuba showing his. We know they think Michael Taft is one of the guys back there that knows what's going on. Manny Muhammad has shown some real, I don't know, almost preternatural abilities in that regard. Jalen Gilbo, smart football player.
Yeah,
I know it may not be the most talented physically.
I agree.
First round pick guys. Is it maybe one of the smarter, if not the smartest secondary at Texas?
That's a great point. I agree with that because Blake Gideon's on the record, and he's one of the smartest DBs in DBU history. And he says that Michael Taft is one of the smartest DBs he's ever been around. And I'm with you. Janae Barron's a football investigator. Andrew Makuba, remember that Georgia interception he had?
Yep.
It was the same thing. It was the same kind of thing where he's looking for work on the backside as the backside defender of the formation, and the quarterback they don't expect him to be there because most DBs they're not that deep into the chess match. Right? They're not thinking that far ahead. All right, well, I have no work. All right, where's the nearest offensive player? Where's my nearest offensive threat? Let me go find him. And he did it once again. I believe there was no receiver over there for him to defend. He was like, all right, well, I got to find some work. I'm not just going to sit over here. And a lot of defenders, they will. You're watching, they're just going to sit. And it's like, what are you doing?
I did my job. I got nothing
to do. It's like, no, you got plenty to do. Go find work. What are you doing? Go find work. And he's just one of those guys that he gets it. And his football intelligence. To your point, I haven't seen a secondary play with this much football IQ in a long time. You're right. Most of the time at Texas, where it's guys who are just elite athletes, the guys I played with, the Quentin Jammers, the Michael Huffs, the Nathan Bashers, they're just they had high football IQ. I'm not saying they didn't, but they were also just physical freaks. That's why these guys were drafted in the first round, and they're drafting all-time leaders in interceptions and played both ways. I mean, these guys, I'm with you. I don't know if there are that many physical, athletic freaks among this group. They're good. They're great athletes. They wouldn't be at Texas if they weren't. But in terms of guys who drafted in the first round, because that's what the NFL kind of looks at, that's a great point. I don't know how many of them there are. I don't even know what Ja'Day Barron is that. I don't know how he's going to test. If he runs a 4.3, then okay, all right, there you go. You got a really good shot. But the NFL wants guys who meet a certain freakish level of athleticism. And I don't know how many of those guys right now there are in the secondary, but I don't know if there's better secondary that I've seen. At Texas probably since 09 maybe, or 09, 08, 05, somewhere in there, that group.
Interesting. Yeah. They play smart and they play together. And you're right. They find work. It's like, you got to keep your hands and your eyes busy playing defense, and they do that. All right, Rod, that's going to do it for Second Watch with Rod Babers. I want to say thank you again to our sponsor, Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch or orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000, and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. I love the fact that, Dr. Robin obviously played at Texas. I got a couple of emails from folks after the first day that we announced that he was a new sponsor. And they said, "Oh, I love this. He's my orthopedist. He's terrific." So make sure you give him a call, 512-856-1000. All right, Rod B, that's going to do it for Second Watch. Longhorn defense comes in clutch, but Sark was ready for him with a couple of different change-ups, I think, and the run game really got going. All right, for Rod Babers, I'm Bobby Burton. Thanks again to Brett Robin. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.